Anthony pushed open the door to his hotel room and tossed his briefcase onto the bed. Tomorrow morning. That's all that mattered. One interview that could change everything for him and Leslie, his 10-year-old daughter. He loosened his tie and headed for the bathroom to splash some water on his face. The door was already cracked open. Strange, he pushed it wider. A woman lay curled on the floor in a hotel cleaner's uniform, fast asleep. Anthony's first thought was to call the front desk. His second was to shout. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way her hand was tucked under her cheek, or the exhaustion written across her face even in sleep. He stepped closer, ready to wake her, when his eyes caught the name tag pinned to her uniform. His stomach dropped. Naomi, his ex-wife, the same woman who walked out on him and Leslie 3 years ago without a word, without a goodbye, without a reason. He blinked hard, but the name didn't change. His pulse thundered in his ears as he crouched down, his hands shaking. 3 years of his daughter asking when Mommy was coming home. 3 years of unanswered questions. 3 years of silence. And now she was here. On the floor of his hotel bathroom, wearing a cleaner's uniform. The woman stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. And when she saw him, her face went from confusion to horror in half a heartbeat. Anthony? Before we continue, let us know in the comments section where in the world you're tuning in from. We love seeing how far our stories reach. And if this story speaks to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Anthony's mind went blank. For a moment, neither of them moved. Naomi scrambled to her feet, her back pressed against the bathroom wall, her eyes wide with something that looked like shame and fear mixed together. I didn't know you'd be here, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I was just cleaning and I got so tired I just sat down for a second and I must have... What are you doing here? Anthony's voice came out harder than he intended. What are you doing in this hotel? What are you doing as a cleaner? Naomi's hands trembled as she smoothed down her uniform. She wouldn't meet his eyes. I work here. I've been working here for about 8 months now. 8 months. She'd been in this city for 8 months, maybe longer. And she never reached out, never called, never tried to see Leslie. Anthony felt something hot and sharp twist in his chest. You've been here this whole time? Anthony, please, do you have any idea what you did to us? The words burst out before he could stop them. Do you have any idea what it's been like? Leslie asks about you every single day, Naomi. And I have to tell her I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're okay. I don't know if you're even alive. Naomi flinched like he'd struck her. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. I know, and I'm so sorry. Sorry? Anthony laughed, but there was no humor in it. You disappeared. You left a note that said you needed to find yourself, and then nothing. 3 years of nothing. I couldn't face you, Naomi said, her voice cracking. I couldn't face what I'd done. Anthony stared at her, really looked at her for the first time since she'd opened her eyes. She looked older, thinner. There were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide, and her uniform hung loose on her frame. This wasn't the woman who'd left. This was someone who'd been through something. He took a breath, trying to steady himself. What happened to you? Naomi's shoulders sagged. She looked down at her hands, at the wedding ring that was no longer there. Everything fell apart. That's not an answer. I know. She wrapped her arms around herself. Can we sit down, please? Anthony hesitated. Part of him wanted to throw her out, call security, pretend this never happened. But another part of him, the part that remembered loving this woman, that remembered building a life with her, needed to understand. He stepped back into the main room. Naomi followed slowly, like she was afraid he might change his mind. She sat on the edge of the chair by the window. Anthony remained standing. "Talk," he said. Naomi took a shaky breath. "When I left, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was failing you. Failing Leslie. I felt like I was drowning, Anthony. Like every day I was pretending to be this person I wasn't, and I didn't know how to tell you that. So you just left? I know how it sounds. I know." She pressed her palms against her eyes. "There was someone else, a man I met at the gym. He made me feel like I mattered again, like I was more than just a wife and mother. He told me I deserved better, that I was wasting my life." Anthony's jaw clenched. He'd suspected, but hearing it out loud was different. "So I left with him," Naomi continued, her voice hollow. "I thought he was going to give me this amazing new life. He promised me everything. We moved 3 states away. He said we'd start fresh. And it was all a lie." Naomi's laugh was bitter. "Turns out he was married, had 2 kids. He'd done this before with other women. I was just another stupid woman who believed him." Anthony felt his anger wavering, replaced by something he didn't want to feel. Pity. "When I found out, I confronted him. He kicked me out. I had no money, no car, no friends in that city, nothing." She looked up at him finally, and her eyes were red. "I was too ashamed to come back, too ashamed to call you and admit what I'd done, that I'd thrown away my family for a man who didn't even exist. So you stayed away for 3 years? I worked whatever jobs I could find, waited tables, cleaned houses, saved enough to move to a new city, then another. I kept thinking I'd get myself together first, that I'd become someone worthy of coming back to you and Leslie. But it never happened. I just kept falling further." Anthony sat down heavily on the bed. This was too much. Too much information, too much pain, too much of everything all at once. "Leslie turned 10 last month," he said quietly. Naomi's face crumpled. "I know. I knew she would. I thought about her every day. But you never called. I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid she'd hate me. Afraid I'd make everything worse." Naomi wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. "I've been in this city for 8 months, and I've driven by our old house 12 times. I've sat in my car outside Leslie's school twice, but I couldn't bring myself to go in. I couldn't face what I'd done to her." Anthony's phone buzzed. He pulled it out and saw a text from Leslie. His mom was sending him a picture of their daughter doing homework at the kitchen table, her tongue sticking out in concentration, the way it always did. Naomi saw the screen before he could pull it away. Her breath hitched. "She's so big now," Naomi whispered. Anthony locked his phone and shoved it back in his pocket. "She asks about you. Not as much as she used to, but she still does. Last week she asked if you stopped loving her. If that's why you left." "No." Naomi's voice broke. "No, Anthony. Please tell me you didn't let her think that." "What was I supposed to tell her? I didn't know why you left. I didn't know if you were okay. I didn't know anything." Naomi stood up abruptly, pacing the small space between the chair and the window. "I need to see her. Please. I need to explain to her that none of this was her fault. That I love her. That leaving her was the worst mistake of my life. You think you can just walk back into her life after 3 years?" "I don't expect anything from you," Naomi said quickly. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I destroyed everything. But Leslie deserves to know the truth. She deserves to know that her mother didn't abandon her because of anything she did." Anthony stood up too, running his hand through his hair. His interview tomorrow suddenly seemed insignificant compared to this. "I don't know if I can let you do that. Anthony, She's finally starting to be okay. She's finally stopped crying herself to sleep. You want me to bring you back into her life just so you can hurt her again when you leave? I won't leave, Naomi said desperately. I swear to you, I won't. How can I trust that? Anthony's voice rose. How can I trust anything you say after what you did? The room fell silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning. Naomi looked at him with those same brown eyes, and for just a second, Anthony saw the woman he'd married. The woman who'd held his hand during Leslie's birth. The woman who'd laughed at his terrible jokes and fallen asleep on his shoulder during movies. But that woman was gone, and he didn't know who was standing in front of him now. I can't promise you'll ever trust me again, Naomi said softly. But I'm begging you. Let me try to make this right with Leslie, even if it's just once, even if you never let me see her again after that. She needs to know I love her. Anthony closed his eyes. This was impossible. Every instinct told him to protect his daughter, to keep her away from the person who'd hurt her most. But another voice whispered that maybe Naomi was right. Maybe Leslie did need to hear the truth. If I let you see her, he said slowly, it happens on my terms. Slowly. Carefully. The second I think you're going to hurt her again, you're out. Do you understand? Naomi nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face. Yes. Yes, I understand. Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. He held up his hand. Don't thank me yet, and don't make me regret this. Anthony didn't sleep that night. He lay in the hotel bed staring at the ceiling, his phone clutched in his hand, Naomi's employee badge number saved in his contacts, in case she tried to run again. They'd agreed to meet in the hotel restaurant at 7 in the morning before his interview. He needed answers. Real answers. Not just the surface of what happened, but why. Why she'd really left. Why she'd stayed away. Why now? When he walked into the restaurant, she was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. She wasn't wearing the cleaner's uniform anymore. Just jeans and a plain sweater that looked like it had seen better days. Without the harsh lighting of the hotel room, she looked even more worn down. I got you coffee, she said as he sat down. Black, 2 sugars, unless that's changed. It hasn't. Anthony took the cup but didn't drink. We need to talk, really talk. Because if you're going to see Leslie, I need to understand what happened. All of it. Naomi nodded, her hands wrapped around her own cup like she was trying to draw warmth from it. What do you want to know? Start from the beginning. The real beginning. Not the version you told me last night. She flinched but didn't. Look away. You're right. There's more. She took a breath. It started about a year before I left. Maybe longer. I started feeling like I was disappearing, like I'd wake up every morning and put on this mask of the perfect wife and mother. But underneath, I didn't know who I was anymore. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were happy. Leslie was happy. And I thought if I said something, if I admitted I was struggling, it would ruin everything. Naomi's voice cracked. I thought there was something wrong with me, that other mothers didn't feel this way. So I just kept pushing it down. Anthony set his coffee down. I would have listened. I know that now. But back then, all I could think was that I was failing, that I was supposed to love every second of being a mother, and instead, I felt trapped. She wiped at her eyes. Then I met David at the gym, and he looked at me like I was someone, not someone's wife, not someone's mother, just me. So you had an affair? Yes. She didn't try to soften it. It started as just talking, then coffee, then more. He told me I deserved to be happy, that I'd given up too much of myself, and I believed him because I wanted to believe him. How long? 6 months before I left. Naomi's hands shook. He kept saying we should run away together. Start over. That he'd take care of me. And I was so lost, Anthony. So completely lost that it actually sounded like a solution. Anthony felt sick. 6 months. She'd been planning to leave for 6 months while he'd been completely oblivious. While he'd been kissing her goodbye every morning and asking about her day every night. The night I left, Naomi continued, David told me it was now or never. That if I really loved him, I'd prove it by leaving with him. So I did. I wrote that stupid note and I walked out on the best things in my life because a man I barely knew told me to. And Leslie? You didn't even say goodbye to her. Naomi's face crumpled. I couldn't look at her face. I knew if I saw her, I wouldn't be able to leave. So I waited until she was at school. I'm a coward, Anthony. I've always been a coward. What happened after you left? We drove to Nevada. David had told me he had a job lined up there, that we'd get an apartment together. But when we got there, he kept making excuses. The job fell through. The apartment wasn't ready. We stayed in cheap motels for 2 months while I used up my savings. Anthony remembered checking their bank account after she left. She'd taken $12,000, money they'd been saving for Leslie's education. Then, one day I was doing laundry at the motel, Naomi said, and I found a receipt in David's pocket. For flowers, expensive flowers. I thought maybe he'd bought them for me and forgotten to give them. So I called the florist to ask. She laughed bitterly. They'd been delivered to an address in Las Vegas, to his wife. He was married with 2 kids, 8 and 11. I looked him up online after that. Found his Facebook, his Instagram, pictures of his whole family on vacation, at baseball games, having Sunday dinners. And there I was, the other woman, living in a motel and believing every lie he told me. Anthony didn't know what to say. Part of him felt vindicated. She'd destroyed their family for nothing. But another part of him just felt sad for all of them. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. He just shrugged and said I'd known what this was, that he'd never promised me anything permanent. Naomi's voice went flat. Then he left, took his things and drove away. I never saw him again. So, you were alone in Nevada with no money? I had about $400 left. I got a job washing dishes at a casino, slept in my car for 3 weeks until I saved enough for a room in a boarding house. She looked down at her hands. I wanted to call you so many times. I'd have my phone in my hand, your number pulled up, and I just couldn't do it. I was so ashamed. You should have called anyway. I know, but every day that passed made it harder. Every day was another day I'd abandon my daughter, another day I'd have to explain. So I just kept working. I moved to Arizona after a year, worked at a diner. Then I came here 8 months ago. Why here? Why this city? Naomi met his eyes. Because it's only 2 hours from where you live. I thought maybe if I was closer, I'd find the courage to come back, to face what I'd done. But you didn't. No. I drove to the old neighborhood twice. The second time, I saw Leslie walking home from school with a friend. She was laughing at something, her backpack bouncing on her shoulders. She looked so happy. Naomi's tears fell freely now. And I thought, she's better off without me. She's moved on. Why would I come back just to disrupt her life again? Anthony shook his head. She hasn't moved on. She just learned to live with the hole you left. The words hung between them, heavy and true. Naomi covered her face with her hands. There's something else, she said after a moment. Something I need to tell you before you let me see Leslie. Anthony's stomach tightened. What? I tried to kill myself. 6 months after David left. I took a bottle of pills and sat in my car in a parking lot waiting to die. She looked at him, and her eyes were hollow. Obviously, it didn't work. Someone found me and called an ambulance. I spent 3 days in the hospital, then 2 weeks in a psychiatric facility. Anthony felt like he'd been punched. Naomi, I'm okay now. I'm on medication. I see a therapist twice a month. But I need you to know that's who you'd be letting back into Leslie's life. Someone who got that low. Someone who was that broken. Are you still? No. I'm not going to hurt myself. I have bad days. But I'm not there anymore. She straightened her shoulders. I'm telling you because you deserve to know everything before you decide. If you don't want me around Leslie, I'll understand. I'll walk away and never come back. Anthony stood up, needing to move, needing to process. He walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. His interview was in 2 hours. He should be reviewing his notes, preparing his answers. Instead, he was standing here deciding whether to let his ex-wife back into his daughter's life. When you were in the hospital, he said, not turning around, did you think about Leslie? She was all I thought about. Then why didn't you call? Why didn't you at least let her know you were alive? Because I thought she'd be better off thinking I was gone than knowing her mother was the kind of person who'd try to leave her on purpose. Anthony turned back. That's not your choice to make. Leslie has spent 3 years wondering if you loved her, if she did something wrong, if you're dead or alive. You think that's better than knowing you were sick? Naomi stood up too. You're right. I made the wrong choice. I've made nothing but wrong choices since the day I left. But I'm asking you to give me a chance to make one right choice. Let me tell Leslie the truth. Let me be honest with her about who I am and what happened. And then let her decide if she wants me in her life. She's 10 years old. She can't make that decision. Then you make it for her. But please, Anthony, don't let her spend the rest of her life thinking she wasn't enough. Because she was. She is. She's everything. Anthony walked back to the table and sat down. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a video from Leslie's last birthday party. He turned the screen toward Naomi. In the video, Leslie was blowing out candles on her cake, her face bright with joy. But in the background, you could hear someone ask if she'd made a wish. Leslie's smile faltered just for a second. I wished for the same thing I always wish for, she'd said quietly. Anthony paused the video. She wished for you to come home. She wishes for it every birthday, every shooting star, every time she throws a penny in a fountain. Naomi's hand trembled as she reached toward the phone but didn't touch it. I don't deserve her. No, you don't. But she deserves to know her mother loves her. Anthony pocketed his phone. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going home tomorrow after my interview. You're going to give me 2 weeks to prepare Leslie, to tell her you're back, to make sure she's ready. 2 weeks? 2 weeks. Then you can come to the house. We'll have dinner. You'll answer her questions honestly. And we'll see what happens after that. He leaned forward. But Naomi, I swear to you, if you hurt her again, if you make promises you can't keep, if you disappear, I will make sure you never get near her again. Do you understand? I understand. And you need to keep seeing your therapist. You need to stay on your medication. You need to be stable. Because Leslie needs stability more than she needs a mother who shows up and falls apart. I will. I promise. Anthony stood up. I need to go prepare for my interview. Give me your phone number, your real one. Naomi rattled off the numbers, and Anthony saved them. Then he started walking toward the elevator. Anthony? Naomi called after him. He turned. Thank you for giving me a chance. I know I don't deserve it. Anthony looked at her for a long moment. You're right. You don't. But Leslie does. This isn't for you. It's for her. Then he walked away, leaving Naomi standing alone in the restaurant, hope and fear written across her face in equal measure. 2 weeks felt like both forever and no time at all. Anthony had gotten the job. Some distant part of him registered that as good news. But most of his energy went into preparing Leslie for what was coming. He'd started slowly. Casual mentions over dinner. "I've been thinking about your mom lately." Then, a few days later, "Would you want to know where she is if I found out?" Leslie's answers had been cautious at first, like she was afraid to hope. But by the end of the first week, she'd asked him directly, "Did you find her, Dad?" So he told her. Not everything. She didn't need to know about David or the pills or the years of Naomi living just 2 hours away. But he told her that her mom was back, that she wanted to see her, that she was sorry. Leslie had cried. Then she'd gotten angry. Then she'd cried again. And through it all, Anthony held her and let her feel everything she needed to feel. Now it was Saturday evening, and Naomi was due to arrive in 20 minutes. Leslie had changed her outfit 3 times. She was wearing her favorite blue dress now, the one with the flowers on it, and she'd brushed her hair until it shined. "What if she doesn't like me anymore?" Leslie asked, standing in front of the hallway mirror. Anthony knelt down beside her. "She's going to love you. She never stopped loving you." Then why did she leave? It was the question she'd asked 100 times over the past 2 weeks, and Anthony still didn't have a perfect answer. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, really big ones. Your mom made a mistake, and she's been trying to figure out how to fix it ever since. Is she staying? After tonight? I don't know, sweetheart. We'll have to see. The doorbell rang. Leslie's whole body went rigid. Anthony squeezed her shoulder. "You ready?" She nodded, but her hand found his and gripped it tight. Anthony opened the door. Naomi stood on the porch holding a small wrapped box. She'd dressed carefully, a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked nervous. Terrified, actually. "Hi," she said, her voice barely steady. "Hi," Anthony replied. He stepped back to let her in. Naomi's eyes went immediately to Leslie. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Anthony could feel his daughter's hand shaking in his. "Leslie," Naomi whispered. "You're so tall. You're so beautiful." Leslie didn't say anything. She just stared at her mother like she was trying to memorize her face, like she was afraid Naomi might disappear if she blinked. Naomi took a tentative step forward. "I brought you something. It's not much, but..." She held out the wrapped box. Leslie looked up at Anthony. He gave her an encouraging nod. Slowly, she let go of his hand and walked toward Naomi. She took the box carefully, like it might break. "Can I hug you?" Naomi asked, her voice cracking. Leslie nodded, and then Naomi dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms, and both of them started crying. Anthony had to look away, his own throat tight. They stayed like that for a long time. When they finally pulled apart, Leslie wiped her eyes and looked down at the box in her hands. "Can I open it?" "Of course." Leslie tore off the wrapping paper. Inside was a small photo album. She opened it slowly. The first page had a picture of Naomi holding newborn Leslie in the hospital. The second showed Leslie's first birthday. The third was from a trip to the zoo. "I kept all the pictures I had," Naomi explained. "When I left, I could only take a few things, but I took these. I looked at them every single day." Leslie flipped through the pages, her fingers tracing over the images. "I thought you forgot about me." "Never. Not for 1 second." Naomi reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Leslie's ear. "I made a terrible mistake when I left. The worst mistake of my whole life. But I never forgot you. I never stopped being your mom, even when I wasn't here. Why did you go? Anthony tensed. This was the moment. Naomi had promised to be honest. Naomi took a shaky breath. I was sad. Really, really sad. So sad that I couldn't think straight. And I made some very bad choices because I thought they would make the sadness go away. But they didn't. They just made everything worse. Are you still sad? Sometimes. But I have people who help me now. A doctor I talk to. Medicine that makes it easier. And I'm learning how to be okay again. Leslie closed the photo album and held it against her chest. Dad says you want to see me more. Not just tonight. I do. If you want that. But only if you want it, Leslie. This is your choice. Leslie looked back at Anthony. He gave her a small smile, trying to show her it was okay, whatever she decided. I want it, Leslie said quietly. But I'm scared you'll leave again. Naomi's face crumpled, but she held herself together. I understand why you're scared, and I can't promise I'll be perfect. I'm going to make mistakes, but I promise I won't disappear again. Even on my worst days, I'll still be here. You'll always know where I am. Do you promise? I promise. Leslie nodded slowly. Then she held out her hand. Pinky promise? Naomi let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She hooked her pinky around Leslie's. Pinky promise. Anthony cleared his throat. Dinner's ready. I made spaghetti. They moved to the dining room. Anthony had set 3 places, and for a moment it felt surreal, like they'd stepped back in time. But the empty chair at the head of the table reminded him that this wasn't the past. This was something new, something uncertain. Dinner was awkward at first. Small talk about school and work. Leslie asked Naomi about the hotel, and Naomi told her about some of the interesting guests she'd met. Anthony watched them carefully, ready to intervene if things got too heavy. But then Leslie asked, Do you remember when we went to the beach and I got stung by a jellyfish? Naomi smiled. You screamed so loud I thought something terrible had happened. Then you wanted to go right back in the water. Because you told me I was brave. You were brave. You are brave. The conversation flowed easier after that. Stories and memories, carefully curated to avoid the painful parts. Anthony found himself relaxing slightly, though he never fully let his guard down. After dinner, Leslie asked if Naomi wanted to see her room. Anthony started to follow, but Naomi looked back at him. Is it okay if it's just us for a few minutes? Every instinct screamed no. But Leslie was looking at him with those hopeful eyes, and he realized he had to let them try. 10 minutes, he said. Then it's bedtime. He cleaned up the dishes, straining to hear their voices from upstairs. Mostly he caught murmurs and occasional laughter. When he couldn't stand it anymore, he walked to the base of the stairs. Leslie was showing Naomi her drawings, explaining each one in detail. Naomi sat on the edge of the bed, completely focused on their daughter, like nothing else in the world existed. Anthony leaned against the wall and let himself feel it. The grief, the anger, the hope, all of it tangled together in a knot he didn't know how to untie. Time for bed, he called up. Naomi came downstairs a few minutes later. Leslie followed, already in her pajamas. Can she come back next Saturday? Leslie asked. Anthony looked at Naomi. She looked back at him, vulnerable and terrified and hopeful all at once. We'll see, he said. At the door, Naomi turned to Leslie. Thank you for giving me a chance. I know I don't deserve it. Dad says everybody deserves a second chance, Leslie said, even when they mess up really bad. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. Your dad is a good man. After Leslie went to bed, Anthony walked Naomi to her car. The night air was cool, and somewhere down the street a dog was barking. Thank you, Naomi said. For tonight, for all of this. Don't thank me yet. We're taking this slow, one visit at a time. I know. And Anthony, I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to prove to you both that I can be trusted again. I hope so. For Leslie's sake. Naomi got in her car. Before she closed the door, she looked up at him. I never stopped loving you either. I know that doesn't matter now. I know I destroyed that. But I wanted you to know. Anthony didn't respond. He just stepped back and watched her drive away. Inside, he checked on Leslie. She was still awake, the photo album open on her lap. "Dad?" she said as he sat on the edge of her bed. "Yeah, sweetheart? Do you think she'll really come back?" Anthony smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "I think she's going to try." "Is that enough?" "I don't know. But it's a start." Leslie closed the album and set it on her nightstand. "I'm glad she came tonight." "Me too." "Even though you're still mad at her?" Anthony smiled sadly. "Even though I'm still mad at her." Leslie snuggled down under her covers. Anthony kissed her forehead and turned off the light. But before he could leave, her voice came out of the darkness. "Dad, do you think our family can be fixed?" Anthony paused in the doorway. It was the question he'd been asking himself for 2 weeks. For 3 years, really. "I think," he said slowly, "that we're not broken. We're just different now. And maybe that's okay." 3 months later, Anthony stood in the parking lot of Leslie's school, watching the spring concert. Naomi sat 2 rows in front of him. They weren't ready to sit together yet. But they were getting there. When Leslie came on stage in her choir uniform, both of them leaned forward. Leslie's eyes scanned the audience. When she found them both, her whole face lit up. She waved, a small, quick movement that made Anthony's chest tight. After the concert, Leslie ran to Naomi first. It had stopped hurting watching that. Mostly. "Did you see me? Did I do okay?" "You were perfect," Naomi said, hugging her. Then Leslie turned to Anthony and hugged him too. "Did you get it on video?" "Every second." The 3 of them walked to the parking lot together. They weren't a family again, not the way they used to be, but they were something. Something new and fragile and still being built. Naomi had kept her promises. She'd shown up every Saturday. She'd answered every difficult question. She'd stayed. As they reached their cars, Leslie asked, "Can we all get ice cream?" Anthony and Naomi exchanged a look. It was still complicated, still careful. But there was something there that hadn't been before. Understanding, maybe, or just the shared love of the girl standing between them. "Sure," Anthony said. "We can get ice cream." And as they drove to the shop in separate cars, Anthony realized something. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if he'd ever fully forgive Naomi, or if they'd ever be more than co-parents navigating an impossible situation. But he knew they were all still here, still trying, still showing up. Sometimes that was enough. If this story touched something in you, we want to hear from you. Put yourself in Anthony's shoes for a moment. If someone you loved betrayed you the way Naomi did, walked out without a word, and then showed up years later asking for a second chance, what would you do? Would you let them back in for your child's sake? Or would the hurt be too deep to forgive? Have you ever been in a situation where someone who wronged you tried to make things right? Did you give them that second chance? Or did you walk away? Drop your answer in the comments. We read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe to Soul Story, and share this with someone who needs to hear it.